Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 23 of season 5 of Arrow, Lian Yu. Here's our season finale. And all in all, it's a pretty solid episode. There's definitely a lot of good moments here, but there's a few things that just didn't quite work for me. So let's just kind of get right into things. So this is the end of our flashbacks to the island. And they did wrap it all up very nicely. And I definitely did like, Oliver finally getting to finish Kovar off. And he snaps his neck, and then even before that happens, we actually see Kovar's skeleton laying around on the island. I thought that was cool. It just didn't really seem that super important to me what was happening there. If Oliver Queen never resurfaced, well, don't you think they totally would have come to the island to check on him and find out what happened or something like that? So the idea that Oliver would have been stuck on that island forever if he had missed that boat seems a little ridiculous now, knowing what we know. And I was honestly just kind of hoping for something a little bit more spectacular from Kovar than what we got in this episode. But things are what they were. Seeing Oliver on the phone with his mom, that was a kicker, and really did drive home a lot of the stuff we saw emotionally from that first episode when I thought back on it. Let's see. So what else do we need to talk about? Another thing that didn't really work for this episode is Talia's whole thing with working with Prometheus was she wanted to pay Oliver back for killing her dad, and yet it's Nyssa that Talia has her big throwdown with. So, granted, Nyssa did have her own beef with Talia, but it just feels a little bit more like an afterthought than something that really was strongly developed for Nyssa as an individual character. It's like, okay, we got to have somebody fight Talia. Oliver's got to go deal with Prometheus. Okay, Nyssa does make the most sense, but again, it was really Oliver, not Nyssa, that Talia was interested in. So that ultimately ended up feeling a little disappointing to me. And I do have to point out, we never really found out who Vigilante was. Now, what I've been hearing online is that they weren't able to get the actor that they wanted, and that they're going to try and wrap things up with Vigilante next season. But still, that's pretty disappointing. So let's see, what else to say? Nothing really huge to say about Evelyn this episode. Again, she seems very one note, and she's never the most hugely fleshed out character before. It'll be interesting to just kind of see what they might do with her next season. Having maybe Dinah take her on, current Black Canary versus a former Black Canary. And of course, a member of Team Arrow gone bad. There's certainly still, I think, storytelling potential there. Speaking of Dinah, it was pretty cool to see Quentin, really kind of giving his blessing to her using the name Black Canary. Not to mention knocking out Black Siren, basically kind of a way of saying, okay, this might be my daughter from another Earth, but, that fact is not going to have any more power over me. So that was a nice moment for Quentin. Nothing really particular to say about Renee or Curtis this episode. Felicity, I did like that moment she had where she kissed Oliver and she said, there's a chance we might die here, and I didn't want to die not having done that. So we'll see where things go with Oliver and Felicity next season. And somebody once said the dance of courtship never gets old. And while that, I don't know exactly if that's 100% true, Arrow is certainly doing the Oliver Felicity saga a lot better than a lot of other shows have done similar things with various characters over the years. Yeah, nothing really particular to say about Diggle this episode either. Let's see. Oh, I just completely lost my train of thought there for a moment. Ultimately, though, the big thing with this episode was that Oliver really did drive it home that to Chase that, like, I'm not going to be the man that you want me to be. I might have been that person at one point. At one point, all these things that you've said about me, yeah, that might have been true about me. That's not who I am now, and I'm never going to be that person again, no matter what you do. Even if you kill my son, I won't be that person. And I really was very satisfied by how this all ultimately played out with Oliver. Oliver ultimately does win. He convinces Chase, like, no matter what you do, I'm not going to be that person that you want me to be. And then, of course, Chase, kills himself and sets off all those explosions on the island. Which, I mean, it's a nice way to set up a pretty good cliffhanger for next season, except, well, we know there's that underground prison on the island, and it makes sense that everybody would be able to hide there. Also interesting to note that nobody was terribly concerned about that Argus security guard that they knocked out at the beginning of the episode. Nobody seemed to care about making sure he was okay, and I seriously doubt he was the only Argus person on the entire island. But, details, right? The one big thing here this episode, of course, was apparently Malcolm Merlin's death. And John Barrowman has said on social media, like, yeah, it's been great, but I'm kind of stepping away. I'm leaving the Arrowverse behind. I'm going to go off and do other things. And, fair enough. I mean, we've gotten 5 seasons of him as an important character. It kind of makes sense that, of course, he would probably at some point want to move on to other things. Of course, they made a point to not show Malcolm being dead. It's a comic, so until you see a body, even then, that's not an ironclad guarantee. So what I imagine they'll probably do is, maybe get him to come back for like one episode at some point next season. I seriously doubt he's never, ever, ever going to pick up the role of Malcolm Merlin again. They're probably just going to let that character set for a while, and then they'll just bring him back for one episode first to do something really special with him. John Barrowman really does strike me as the sort of guy that, that he'd be willing to do if it's a good story and he can work it into his schedule. Let's see. Of course. Since we're talking about Malcolm, we do have to talk about Thea's reaction to his death, which is very interesting with her. It's sort of like, I spent so much time hating him. He did all these horrible things to people I care about, did all these horrible things to me, and at the end, he sacrificed himself. And again, the one redeeming feature that Malcolm has is that he genuinely does love Thea. And even though he was a really crappy father most of the time, Malcolm really did genuinely love Tommy. And he genuinely loved his wife that got murdered by Danny Brickwell. But he does set up a very understandable conflict within Thea. It's hard not to feel something for someone who sacrificed their life for you out of love, even if that person was, in every other aspect, a terrible person. And I think her situation there is really, it's very easy to just want to pigeonhole Malcolm as an evil person, and by and large, that's what he was. But, everybody has a little gray in them as well, and then she's that gray in Malcolm. He can, mind control her to murder someone, but then he can turn around and sacrifice his life to save hers. So that prevents her from, having a clean break with what happened to him. And it's going to be interesting. And you can't help but wonder if Thea sort of looks at that and wonders if, maybe that isn't a little bit symbolic of her. I mean, she's done some pretty crazy and bad things in her time. And yet, at at heart he is a good person. So I think that might be something that's kind of playing around in the back of her mind. Um, of course, we can't help but mention the return of Slade Wilson this episode. Again, rumor had it that Manu Bennett had some creative issues or some disagreements with the folks behind the scenes, and that's why we didn't really see Slade for a really long time. Apparently, that's gotten ironed out, and it was so nice to see him again. He is really a fantastic actor, and he brings so much to this episode. Them bringing up his son Joey. Now, this isn't who we saw in Legends of Tomorrow. That was Grant Wilson, his other son. And then, of course, in the comics, he also has his daughter Rose Wilson. Joe Wilson, of course, is Jericho in the Teen Titans. And, it hasn't been quite confirmed one way or the other, I think, whether or not Titans is going to be set in the CW-verse when it's on that DC streaming thing. But still, it kind of feels like, well, you don't bring up an important character in the Titans universe like Jericho and not kind of go somewhere with it. So I have a feeling this might be them sort of doing a little nod, sowing some seeds right there. And, of course, Oliver basically not even really offering that information as a bribe to Slade to help him. It's just like, hey man, I'm freeing you. I need your help. Here. I mean, it's kind of showing, I think that's showing Slade where Oliver's coming from. And I like how Slade very quickly points out, like, are you sure you want to team up with me? I murdered your mother. And Oliver's like, look, I'm so desperate for help, I'm willing to put that aside for now. And Slade, he points out, like, the Mirakuru is out of the system, does seem to be genuinely regretful of what he's done. He does seem to be, in a lot of ways, back to the person he was before he let jealousy overshadow, consume him, and turned against Oliver. So the idea of, possibly having Slade back as a friend is very intriguing. Deathstroke in the comics is a character that's never quite clicked with me. I mean, there have been moments with the character that I've liked, but Slade Wilson as a person is somebody who, outside of I really think when I've seen Jeff Johns writing it, has just never really quite clicked with me. And in all honesty, I do sort of prefer more what we've been seeing with Manu Bennett here on the show. So I'm really excited about the possibility of him turning up more next season. And I do like how whenever he was sort of being the more sympathetic person, he always had the mask off. And when he was being the more pragmatic person, he had the Deathstroke mask on. I mean, that's something that's really subtle, but it does a lot to really sell that Slade has changed. Now, let's see. Nothing really particular to say about William this episode, but now he's going to know for sure that his dad is the Green Arrow, and what does this mean for everybody? It certainly is interesting to see what might potentially happen with him. And, of course, it's going to be really interesting to see what's going on with everybody next season. I think that covers everything I had to say this episode. All in all, this was a pretty good season. It certainly had its highs and it had its lows, but all around, a solid season of Arrow. Probably not going to go down as my favorite season, but certainly an enjoyable one. And with that said, guys, I'm going to call it here. Of course, I will be back to review Season 6 of Arrow, so please join me then. Until next time. You can follow me on Twitter at HoserJedi. Please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. And until next time, take care and have a good one.